Hi all, welcome to this video on integrated circuits. In the previous video, we were discussing about wafer fabrication and especially the planar process involved in the fabrication of a wafer. And the planar process consists of many kinds of procedures, and two procedures we have completed. One is oxidation, the other one was etching. We will be focusing on two or three more of these processes today in this video, and let us see what they are. Our third procedure that we are going to discuss is diffusion. And diffusion is defined as the process of introduction of impurities into selective regions of a wafer. Or it is the process of doping a silicon wafer selectively. So the impurities are used for doping silicon. So here you can see that there is a silicon layer and there is a silicon dioxide layer, and we have previously said in the case of oxidation that silicon dioxide layer is impenetrable for dopant gases and all. So when there is a dopant gas introduced to this kind of a setup, it can only penetrate to the silicon layer and not into the silicon dioxide layer. So that is the rationale behind using silicon dioxide layer. So you can selectively dope a small region in your silicon wafer by using silicon dioxide as a mask. So coming to the diffusion step, it consists of two steps. One is pre-deposition, and it happens at a temperature of 1000 degrees centigrade, and the second one is drive-in diffusion. So the two steps are pre-deposition and the second one is drive-in diffusion. In the case of pre-deposition, what we are going to do is that we will be introducing a dopant gas onto the surface of the substrate, and the substrate will be kept at a temperature of 1000 degrees centigrade, and of course the dopants will be entering into the substrate, and it will form a highly concentrated layer at the top surface of the substrate. So it doesn't have any depth penetration into the substrate. But that happens in the second step, where we'll be using drive-in diffusion step, where we'll stop the dopant gas introduction into this. We'll be using as such, and we'll be applying a temperature of 1100, that is 1100 degrees Celsius, and kept like that for a time that is defined. And what happens here is that whatever we have introduced in the pre-deposition step, that will slowly penetrate to the depth of the silicon layer. So thus we can obtain a uniform concentration of the dopant into a particular region in the silicon wafer. And we can, after the procedure, we can just strip off the silicon dioxide layers on the top portion of this. So this is how diffusion is done. So we can see here there is a graph that plots depth on the x-axis, depth into the substrate on x-axis, and impurity concentration. So here it is at the surface, and when we go through the x-axis, it goes deep into the silicon layer. Okay, this point on x-axis, it represents the surface of the silicon layer, and when we go through the x-axis, we are going deeper into the silicon layer. And on the y-axis, it's about the impurity concentration. Okay, so in the case of pre-deposition, we'll be having a very high concentration on the surface of the substrate. That is why you can see the concentration, impurity concentration is OA, the length OA. It is represented by length OA, and you can see that the concentration quickly drops when you go into the depth of the substrate. But after the process of drive-in diffusion, the impurity concentration at the surface decreases. That is because we are no longer introducing any dopant gas into the system, but the already existing dopant on the surface will be migrating into the depth of the substrate. So that is what is happening here. That is why the previous depth was just OC, and after drive-in diffusion we will be getting a depth of OD. So this is the story of diffusion, where we have two steps. One is pre-deposition and a drive-in diffusion. So basically there are three ways in which by which you can introduce these dopants. The first way is by using a solid, and the second way is by liquid source, and the third way is a gaseous form of diffusion. So we'll be concentrating on the liquid, and it goes like this. We'll be introducing the liquid source. It can be boron for p-type doping or phosphorus for n-type doping. Whatever it is, it should be in a liquid form. So if you are using phosphorus, then it will be phosphorus oxychloride. So it is a liquid, and we'll be bubbling nitrogen and oxygen through phosphorus compound, and it will have vapor. So it is kept at a temperature controlled bath just because we don't want it to vaporize altogether. We will be introducing in a controlled fashion. You have valves here, and those valves will be controlling the amount of gases that are entering the quartz diffusion tube. So this quartz diffusion tube will be hosting a quartz boat, and that quartz board will be holding the vertically stacked wafers. So the wafers will be subjected to the vapors that are coming from the inlets, and they get into the process of diffusion. So this is how these things are happening, and these quartz diffusion tubes will be all heated up to the temperature of 1000 degrees Celsius. After doing this kind of diffusion pre-deposition step, every wafer will be taken out and subjected to a heating without this thing. Okay, without, we'll be stopping the uh, dopant, and we'll be just heating it like 1100 degrees Celsius also. So after all this process, our diffusion process will be complete. And the problem with the diffusion is that it's not a precise way of introducing ions into it, or the dopants into the substrate. So it can form a small layer here, but after the after the drive-in diffusion, it will not be as given like in this picture. It can diffuse into the surroundings also. Okay, so that is going to be a problem. So if you want to have exactly like a vertical feature, then it's not going to happen in the case of diffusion, because diffusion is an isotropic process. So after heating, these impurity atoms will be migrating in all directions. So that is going to be a problem. So we need to have sometimes certain precise way of doing this kind of a doping. So that is why we go for the next step, and that is ion implantation. And ion implantation is a process of introduction of impurities into selective regions of wafer by bombarding the surface with a high energy dopant. So we will be having a setup like this, where the wafer is located here on a rotating wafer holder, and there is an ion source here. This ion source will be whatever is your impurity, that will be made into ions, and those ions will be made to accelerate and get deflected by a magnet onto an ion selection aperture, and that is for selecting the ion and making sure that the ion that you are going to introduce onto the wafer is exactly what you are required to do. So there can be other kinds of ions also. So we need to screen this kind of unwanted ions. That is why we are using a deflection setup. So whenever the ions are moving in the field of a magnet, then it will be deflected, and that deflection happens to be depending on the charge of the ions. So if there are unwanted ions, that will be deflected in another slightly different way, and it will be blocked by the ion selection aperture. Only the right kind of ions will be passing through the ion selection aperture to get accelerated in an acceleration tube, and that will be focused by lens, and it will be deflected by X and Y scan plates. So these X and Y scan plates are electrically charged, so we can control the electrical charge between the X and Y scan plates, and thereby we can deflect the incoming ion source onto any point on the wafer. So it's just like the television set. So you can deflect onto any point, or you can scan onto any point on the wafer. So this is how ion implantation is done, and it's a very precise method, and that is why we can have very vertical kind of features on this. So suppose if you are trying to make a vertical kind of a impurity introduction, then just like this one, then we can go for ion implantation. Okay. So the advantages of ion implantation over diffusion is like this. There is a precise control over the doping levels, and the depth of penetration can be precise. Okay, so there is you can control the doping level by controlling the amount of ions that are flowing. And there can be depth of penetration precision also. So we can introduce you can increase the velocity of the ions, and when the velocity is increased, the ions will be penetrating more into the wafer. So we can increase the kinetic energy of the ions, thereby penetration depth can be increased. And the purity of dopant is guaranteed. That is because we have this kind of a screening system for taking screening the ions. And uniform doping across the surface. The surface of the wafer will be having uniform doping. That is because the exposure is uniform to every point. Wherever the wafer is being subjected to this kind of an ion implantation beam, ion beam, there the time for subjection and the amount of current that is flowing, that is the ionic current, everything is computer controlled, and it is more easy to control in the case of ion implantation. And there is less spread of dopants in the substrate. As we have seen, there will be spreading of the dopants into the substrate in all directions. That is called isotropic spreading. So that kind of isotropic spreading is not in the case of it's not there in the case of ion implantation. Room temperature process for photoresist can be used instead of oxide as mask, and entire process is in under room temperature, and you don't require to remove the photoresist. So you can use the photoresist itself as the mask. So we'll be discussing shortly what a photoresist is, and what is its importance in planar process. And the disadvantages of ion implantation over diffusion is that crystal defects will be more due to high energy collisions. So there are high energy collisions. There can be a small amount of etching or some kind of unwanted side reactions also. So these kind of crystal defects can be are to be addressed, and usually it is corrected by a process called annealing. And the second one is high initial investment. So this kind of a setup is having a very high investment due to the precision and all other issues. And the operating cost is also high. Very toxic emissions are to be handled. The fifth procedure that we are going to learn is photolithography. Photolithography is the process of transferring geometrical patterns on a glass plate. It is also known as a reticle to the wafer. So we can have a geometrical pattern on a glass plate, and this pattern is to be transferred onto a silicon substrate. For example, we have a silicon substrate, we have a layer of silicon dioxide on top of it, and we got an additional layer called photoresist. It is a light sensitive material. There are two kinds of photoresist. One is called a negative photoresist, the other one is called a positive photoresist. So one what it does is that whenever the ultraviolet radiation reacts with this kind of photoresist, sometimes it can coagulate and become thicker or harden. It can make it harden. So if your photoresist is that kind of a hardening kind of setup, in the case if it is subjected to UV light, then it comes under negative photoresist. So whenever the light falls on the photoresist, it gets hardened, then it is called a negative photoresist. And the rest of the residue where you have unreacted photoresist, you can remove it using a developer solution. Okay. So similarly, you have a positive photoresist also, where whenever there is a UV radiation, that will make it smoother or easier to remove. That photochemical reaction will be making that photoresist to be easily removable. So whenever it is subjected to this UV radiation, you will not be seeing any portion of photoresist there, because that is removed using a developer, another kind of a developer solution. So this is how you can make a pattern using photoresist. And the next step in the procedure of photolithography is that you can use etchant. For example, you can use liquid etchants like hydrofluoric acids for removing silicon dioxide. So we'll be using silicon for hydrofluoric acid to remove the exposed silicon dioxide. So here you have a protective layer for the silicon dioxide under the photoresist. And wherever the silicon dioxide is exposed without the photoresist, those reagents will be reacting with the hydrofluoric acid and it will be removed. So you will be having an exposed silicon underlying. And after exposing to hydrofluoric acid and removing all the silicon dioxide layer, you will be removing the residual photoresist from the top of the silicon dioxide layer here. So it's just the silicon layer and the patterned silicon dioxide layer. Then you can do whatever process you want to do on to the silicon. So this is how, if you want to dope N-type layer here, or if you want to dope P-type layer, you can selectively dope P-type layer here. So this exposed region will be having P regions and the other region will be intrinsically what it was in the previous case. So this is how you will be using photolithography technique to do geometrical patterning. So on the wafer substrate, it involves the steps involved in photolithography. It goes like this. First thing is we need to generate a photo mask. A photo mask is a quartz glass with low thermal expansion. So I have written it here. So it is a quartz glass with a low thermal expansion. That is because it will be subjected to very high temperatures and the thermal expansion should be much less. That is because whenever the radiation passes through, the features should not expand or reduce. Features should be kept as it is. So that is why we are using quartz glass. And it will be coated with a material called chromium and chromium oxide. So this is the cross section of a reticle, glass plate that is used as a photo mask. So you have the quartz glass coated with chromium, which is 74 nanometers thickness, and the chromium will be coated with a chromium oxide layer, which is 26 nanometers thickness. And the role of chromium oxide is as an anti-reflection coating, and chromium will be blocking ultraviolet radiations. So you can remove selectively the chromium layer so that ultraviolet can pass through. Okay. So here there is a glass mask given in this diagram. So that glass mask is having the chromium removed over this and this region. That is why ultraviolet is passing through the glass mask and reaching the photoresist. So this is how you will be making, and everything is done using computer control system, either using laser removal tool or using a chrome etch, a chemical called chrome etch. So you can pattern some pattern onto the chromium coated quartz glass and expose the region, and chrome etch can be used to remove that. So that is also possible. So this is how you generate a photo mask. So you have this photo mask first. The second thing is spin coating of the photoresist on the oxidized wafer. So you will be oxidizing the wafer. So here you can see a silicon and silicon dioxide layer, and on top of that you will be putting some photoresist, and the entire wafer will be kept on a turning table. So that turntable will be rotating at 5000 rpm or so. And what we do during that rotation is that we will be pouring some amount of photoresist on top of it, and that photoresist will be spreading all throughout the surface of the wafer, and it gets a very thin layer of photoresist. So that is what is called spin coating. And after spin coating the photoresist on the oxidized wafer, we will be baking the wafer at 100 degrees Celsius to solidify the photoresist. So we will bake the wafer at 100 degrees Celsius. So the photoresist gets thickened. Then the glass plate is aligned to the wafer. So now we come to the next step. The photo mask is taken, and aligned it to the wafer. So the wafer is here and photomask is here. Then fifth step is UV exposure and removing the unwanted photoresist using an organic solvent. So we can remove the unwanted or unreacted. As you all know, the photoresist is a will be subjected to a photochemical reaction, and wherever there is no photochemical reaction, that will be remaining as unreacted material, and that unreacted material can be removed using an organic solvent. So after having all this, you get this kind of a configuration, and you can remove silicon dioxide. And as we everything is like this, what we have discussed just now. So this is how photolithography process is done, and photolithography is a very crucial thing to make patterns on the silicon wafer. So you can have transistors having p regions, n regions, etc. selectively. So that kind of a selective doping or selective introduction of oxidized layers or metals, etc. is done using photolithography process. So this aids in all other procedures. You can see here there is a need for diffusion. So whenever there is a need for diffusion, you require a silicon dioxide mask. So here also ion implantation, even though you don't require an oxide mask, but you still require a photoresist mask. So that is also needed here. Here in the case of etching, there can be selective regions to remove. So here also there is a photoresist, photo mask, everything is selectively you are removing. So this process, that is photolithography, is very important. It affects all other processes in uh, planar process. So oxidation, whether it be oxidation or whatever, we are going to see other processes also. So all those processes will be affected by photolithography. Everything requires photolithography lithography process. So that is the importance of photolithography, and I think we will stop this video with this, and we will continue with the rest of the procedures in planar process in another video. So thank you all. Have a nice day.